Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show. And we're pleased to have with us today Nick Passalacqua. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So, Nick started doing mock trial in high school in Utica, New York. He founded the first ever mock trial team at Sacred Heart University and then trained at one of the most selective trial programs in the country, something called the Jeffrey Feiger Trial Practice Institute. Today, he runs Passalacqua and Associates, a criminal defense and personal injury firm that just won what's believed to be the largest playground liability award in New York State history, $3.2 million. So you were doing mock trial in high school, and then you founded the first ever mock trial team at Sacred Heart. What was it about the courtroom that hooked you that early?
I think it was always just like high school teachers telling me that I should be a lawyer because I love to argue with them. To be honest, that's kind of
Was that
what
a
sparked.
compliment?
Yeah, I didn't really know, but it started piquing my interest. And well, what is that about? And the high school team I had heard about as I got into high school, and I really enjoyed that. And as I grew through that, I realized there was a collegiate uh, element to it, or a collegiate program throughout the country. And when I went to Sacred Heart, I ended up going there to play football actually, and they didn't have one. So I said, well, then we're going to start it.
Yeah, so how did you fit that in? So it's a Division I football at Sacred Heart. How'd you fit in, that, your schoolwork, and setting up the mock trial? Or you just felt like that was a priority?
Yeah, it was a passion of mine. So it wasn't really like a burden,
Hmm.
and it was just a crash course in time management.
Yeah, probably a good thing for if you're an attorney. So the Jeffrey Feiger Trial Practice Institute is one of the hardest trial programs in the country to get into.
Yes.
What did that experience teach you that law school didn't? And how did you get in there? And tell us about the whole process of getting in there and what that was like.
Sure. Yeah. So the Jeffrey Feiger Trial Practice Institute is the trial practice institute within Michigan State University College of Law. And it was endowed by Jeffrey Feiger, who is most renowned for his repetitive defense of Dr. Kevorkian.
Ah,
And he was an alum of the original Detroit College of Law that was then turned into Michigan State's College of Law. And he had certain criteria for the program. And so you get in, it's only your second and third year, and they only select 32 students per year out of their application pool of typically, over 100. And but he had certain requirements. Like one of the courses was an acting course or a theater course, so you knew how to present in the courtroom setting, how you knew how to kind of walk in. And people don't realize, or many people don't realize, that when your case is on trial, there's all eyes on you from the moment that jury walks in to the moment they walk out. They're watching whether you're paying attention, how you're sitting in the chair, how your client's conducting themselves, how you take notes. Every little thing like that has some kind of an impact on
mm-hmm.
that one or multiple jurors that are watching you at that time. So it was good, great experience really to learn the different types of styles and delivery, and intonation fluctuation. And we're not only wordsmiths on paper as attorneys, but if you're a trial lawyer, you have to be a wordsmith and word merchant verbally, and be sure that you're talking to a jury, not at a jury, so you can
Mm-hmm.
connect with them.
So you clerk for a Supreme Court justice, intern
Yep.
at a DA's office in Detroit, then work for a well-known Utica firm. What made you leave all that and start your own practice?
I had always toyed with the idea of having my own practice or my own firm, having no idea what that looked like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. After my first 2.5 years working at my first position, I just knew that wasn't it. I disliked what I was doing. Um, there was no real opportunity for growth. And so I left there after Christmas 2012, just before New Year's of 2013. But I tell people now, it's in hindsight, it's worked out great. But it wasn't like you hear people now like, oh, I'm leaving, I've got this plan, I'm going to do this. I had no plan. I had no roadmap. I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing next, but this is not it, you know? And after a few months of taking various other interviews, and just nothing feeling right, I said, listen, I got to stop meeting people in coffee shops now. I'm getting referrals and things. Let's try this whole thing out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. At least I can look back and say I tried it. And here we are. That was going on 13 years. I opened up as a solo May 1st of 2013. So,
Yep. So tell me what the first couple of weeks were after hanging out your shingle.
oh man, slow for sure. Um, like I said, I think I paid somebody $1,500 to make me a website. We had no
Uh-huh.
SEO budget. We had no marketing budget. It was me, myself, and I. I didn't have a secretary until February of 17.
Mm-hmm.
So I did everything. Rented a single office from another two attorney outfit here in Utica.
Yep.
And I tell this story occasionally, but I'll never forget. So it was May 1st. This was like the beginning, second week of August, maybe of 2013. And I remember sitting at my desk, and my wife at the time calls the office phone, and we're chatting, and she says, think you're going to bring any money home this month? And I said, "Oh yeah, no, I got some good leads. I think there's some good prospects. Yeah, I think we'll be all right." And I remember hanging up that phone and sitting back and saying to myself, looking around, going, "I don't know how I'm going to pay the $650 office rent because I haven't brought that in this month." You know, and from that moment, I started tracking my positive cash flow week by week, just informally, just to have a visual on it. And it was shortly thereafter that kind of needle kind of tipped, and we did start making money. I did start getting clientele and getting more referrals and getting more business, and haven't looked back since.
So now I'm sure you do all kinds of advertising, that kind of thing. But back then, if you don't have the cash flow, it was I would think it would be just all networking. How did that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, it was definitely more grassroots, just getting out, getting my cards passed out, letting people know what we did, just trying to share the pictures of my business card or link to my website on Facebook where I could, asking for people to share it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was mostly word of mouth, and then direct referrals from those few clients I was getting.
So tell me about the first potential client that came in. How nervous were you?
Oh, very nervous. And they tell you this, and it was definitely true for me, is one of the most difficult things to discuss with a potential client in those situations is the money.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a solo, nobody sees it. But now I own the office building. We've got 12 people. We've got 5 attorneys. We've got the commercials and the website, so it's justified. People just
Right.
understand
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fee pays for all of this and everything, all the overhead. When you're a solo guy with a you know 10 by 10 office sharing space in another firm's building, your name isn't on the walls anywhere. It's a lot harder to like throw a number out and justify it if you get challenged with it. So the money and the retainer conversations were always the most awkward. And at that point in my career, I was constantly getting talked down and getting negotiated with. Like, well, I have this much money, how about that? And I'm like, it's more than if I say no. So sure, yes, we'll start with that you know
Yeah. You do what you got to do. So you now have offices in Utica and Syracuse with 50 plus years of combined experience. How did you attract and develop all that talent in upstate New York? Or is it just
That's
out there?
tough. That's been one of our biggest slowdowns, honestly. 2020, we were named actually the 36th fastest growing law firm in the nation based on our revenue growth from 16
That's
to 19.
impressive.
We grew at about 290% over those 3 years. And part of the reason is we found a great niche here in Utica because it's an aging attorney base. The average age of attorney in private practice is probably 65 years old.
Oh, wow.
So that was great. But then to get further to try and source the top talent became very difficult because we're fishing from a small pond. And while Utica now has a lot of development going on, back in 2016, 2017, 2018, that wasn't really the case. Now we have a brand new hospital that's just built downtown a few blocks away. All of the what were vacant buildings are now studio apartments and lofts and eateries, and there's a lot of development, but still not a singular big draw to be an
Hmm.
attractive move necessarily. But we have luckily we just brought in an attorney from downstate, in Dutchess County. We bring some in from Syracuse because it's only about 45 miles west of here. But one thing we've done to try and facilitate that is we've actually created a pretty robust undergraduate internship program and summer associate law student program, so that we
That's a
kind of
good
get a
idea.
chance to vet them. They get the chance to vet us if they like the culture here and what we're doing. And then if they're appropriate to make an offer to, if they're going into their third year, we make them an offer for the following September after they take the bar exam. Then
So,
when they come in, their learning curve is also very much truncated because they've learned a lot of our systems.
right. That makes sense. So you built something called the Trial Lawyer Development Program to train the next generation. What does that actually look like day to day?
Yeah, so it starts with that summer associate program,
Hmm.
having them learn our SOPs and really lean into the way we do things so everything is standardized. And then the way it looks now is, if you're starting in the criminal department, we relegate certain cases to you of a certain level until you have experience there and prove yourself comfortable handling those, learning to negotiate with district attorneys. Those could look like violation level offenses, disorderly conducts, graduating into some very simple misdemeanors, petty larcenies, DWIs. But we do everything thoroughly. Unfortunately for us, criminal work is kind of at times and in certain areas one of those things that every Tom, Dick, and Harry who has a law license thinks they can just negotiate you out of this or that.
Hmm.
And I was just having this conversation with one of our newer intakers because we had a call for a DWI drug charge. So it's not an alcohol related DWI, but it's based on the allegation that you were under the influence of some other type of illegal substance. There is a lot of different minutia there because there's different requirements that the officers are supposed to follow, different testing they're supposed to subject that person to, so that they can come to other assumptions or guesses as to what that substance might be. And oftentimes they don't, because these agencies don't have what's called the drug recognition evaluator trained on staff.
Hmm.
So we like to try and educate people when they call in that, look, we're not just another law firm that can handle this. This is what we do. And we do it very regularly, to the point that now we know the, minutia to look for over here. What simple thing, it doesn't seem like a big deal to that guy because he doesn't know what he's looking for, but that could make or break your case. A simple timeline being blown, things like that. And it graduates up as you handle more of those cases successfully, as you take certain others to trial. Once you have a certain number of trials under your belt at the misdemeanor level, we graduate you to handling more involved felonies, while at the same time sitting second chair to some of the more experienced attorneys to cut your teeth on some of those larger cases as well.
So, what amount of your time is spent managing this process versus practicing?
Right now, my management time is probably, it was closer to 90%. It's probably down to about 75, 80% now, as we've had some other new staff coming in and we're trying to grow the personal injury side a bit more rapidly. So I'm a little more hands on there. But ideally, we want to scale those and get me back to about 95% management. And I always say, I won't hire anybody unless I truly believe that they are or can be as good or better than me at whatever task or role I'm hiring them for.
That's a generally a good idea, and a lot of people don't like to do it to try to look for people who are better than they are. I mean, in any business, it's absolutely the real way that major businesses grow, but a lot of people are insecure with doing that.
For sure. For sure. They like to be the one with all the answers.
Yes, yeah, and which is what you call it's the apex. It's the part of the funnel that breaks down. So you're doing practicing criminal law and also personal injury. So does an attorney who's in your firm who's working on criminal law, how much crossover is there where they're actually doing some personal injury types of cases, or do they just specialize in one area or the other?
We right now stay very specialized. All of our criminal attorneys stay true to criminal. All of our personal injury attorneys stay true to personal injury. Occasionally, a personal injury attorney will handle a routine appearance for us if we have scheduling conflicts
Hmm.
on the criminal side, and vice versa. And I can step in on either side, having handled a number of each of them as we've grown this thing. But we try to stay very specialized so that, again, we'd like to go an inch wide and a mile deep.
Yeah.
We like to be, I hate the feeling of being a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Hmm.
So we try to avoid that as well, and we like to try and avoid that appearance in any way. So we like to know that we can give our PI attorneys all the resources they need, send them to all the PI specific seminars and conferences we feel are appropriate to expand their knowledge and skill base, and the same with the criminal team. There's a couple conferences that overlap that are helpful, but yeah, we try to stay pretty siloed in terms of the work product.
So probably an easier story to tell the clients too.
Yeah.
So your firm secured a $3.2 million verdict in a playground liability case that's believed to be the largest of its kind in New York. What was that case all about?
Yeah, that was actually a settlement. We actually settled that for
Okay.
3.2, but yeah, that was involving the town of Lee and a young man who was using a seesaw in the summer,
Hmm.
and he had flip-flops on, and I think it was his cousin who was on the other side had got off abruptly. So he came crashing down. Otherwise not a big deal, not something you would think would cause catastrophic injury. But the town had failed to properly maintain this park, and there was absolute deficiency of wood chips underneath it, such that the big giant concrete block base that this seesaw or teeter-totter was anchored into was exposed with a very sharp, jagged, rough edge of concrete where my client's heel struck and immediately sliced wide open. And so that required, a couple dozen stitches, but then never truly healed, causing all kinds of nerve damage and what they call CRPS, or chronic radiating pain syndrome, all up and
Hmm.
down the left side, even radiating up to his arm. Missed a number of days of school, tried ketamine shots, even tried and failed a spinal cord stimulator trial. He was out in Cincinnati seeing specialists and things, even at 15 years old. By the time the case resolved, I believe it happened when he was 11. He still couldn't really bear 100% of his weight on that foot. Believe it or not, the insurance company paid a private investigator to follow the kid around and take videos of him
No, I believe it.
to see if he was actually limping and things. And sure enough, you know, getting on and off the bus, most times he wasn't using a cane, but there were days when he had to use a cane or a walker. There was one video, he slipped on the snow just barely, and you could see him immediately grab that leg and barely be able to step up the 4-inch step, having no idea this guy was watching and videoing him.
So in Discovery, so you snatched all that video, obviously.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
You're known for using cutting edge courtroom technology. Give us an example of how tech has changed the outcome of a case for you.
So tech has been very powerful for me in the courtroom. Before the types of technology that we can utilize now in court, if you were even litigating, let's say, a contract dispute, right? You make 6 copies and distribute the copies to the jury. And then you're talking with the witness and saying, okay, well, I want to direct your attention to, paragraph 3 on page 6. The jury's not even listening to you. They're all thumbing through it themselves, looking at the titles, looking for something. You got a couple of them that are actually following along with you. Well, now I can just call up on the screen the contract. So you recognize this, and give them the witness the hard copy. I recognize this as the contract we signed on whatever date. Okay, great. I'm showing you on the screen page 6, and I'm highlighting paragraph 3. And then you call out paragraph 3 so you can see nothing else. And all the jurors now, typically most courtrooms, most larger courtrooms, they have their own screen, or they've got a giant screen at the corner of the jury box. So everyone, if they're looking at it or not,
Right.
So you can really hold the jurors' hands and direct them to exactly what you want them to see and pay attention to most. So that's been very influential. Even in the last murder trial I had, even something as simple as PowerPoint, if you know how to use it properly and
Mhm.
effectively, can be a game changer. You don't want to put up 16 different things on the screen and distract them. You want one fact per screen or one element per screen. But even with that, there was a lot of video surveillance evidence, but taking a freeze frame and annotating it, as in that case, several witnesses had described the assailant, the shooter.
Mhm.
And there was video of my client getting in what they believed the vehicle, and then a group of them walking away from where they left the vehicle. And everyone's description happened to match not my client's physical description, but someone else's. So what I do is I blurred out the rest of the screen and I said, "Oh, what did this witness say? And that witness? And that witness?" They said stripes on the pants. Boom, and an arrow pops up pointing at the stripes. Oh, and they said black hoodie. Boom, and an arrow pops up on the other side pointing at the black hoodie. Oh, and they said black hat with dread sticking out. Arrow, arrow. Like you point them. You don't have to guess anymore what they're looking at, and they don't have to guess. Wait, what is he talking about?
Mhm.
What did he just describe? Or circles on things and calling those things out. So it's very influential to guide the jury on the exact path you want them to follow.
Interesting. That is that's fascinating. So you handle both criminal defense and personal injury, which most firms don't. How does being a trial area in both you personally make you better at both?
I say this um, carefully because I've got a lot of great colleagues that are outstanding plaintiffs, civil plaintiffs, trial attorneys. Don't get me wrong. But in my experience, that's even if you're a great attorney, trial attorney, that's a whole lot easier ballpark than a criminal trial can be. The reason I say that is you might go into $100 million trial on the civil plaintiff side, right?
Mhm.
But in that regard, I have been able to depose your expert at least once. I've read all their reports. I've had time to research every publication they've ever published. I might have got to depose them a second time. I know what all of their answers are going to be before I get there, right? Just like the other side knows what
Yep.
my clients' answers are going to be because they deposed them one or two times. They've read their statements, they've seen all of their life's medical records, what have you. They know the answers. When I went to a murder trial, like the last murder trial I had to cross examine a DNA forensic scientist with nothing more than their CV and the 3-page report that they compiled for this particular case. That's it. I don't get in New York State. Other states in criminal work, there are deposition type
Mhm.
procedures. Not in New York. In New
Yeah,
York, it's like that's the first time you get to talk to a lot of these
I did
people.
not know that.
Yeah. So I mean, doing my due diligence and having to be thoroughly prepared enough to in how I'm phrasing my questions to that expert to know I'm controlling them and not going to let them go and ramble and make me look foolish. Is a much more difficult skill to acquire than walking in and questioning an expert where you've questioned them 2 or 3 times already.
Mhm. Interesting. So, what's the biggest misconception people have about what a trial attorney actually does?
Trials. It's still, it's. I've had clients hire us for even on the civil side, and they're like, "Well, when are we going to see a judge?" I'm like, man, you hired us 3 days ago. This is not the law. This is not Law and Order. You don't talk to a lawyer and see a judge the next day. It's people fail to realize that probably about 2.5% of cases between criminal and civil actually end up in trial. So while we all say not we all, there's actually far fewer people that will handle trials than many people think. Um, but even the true trial lawyers see trial for me far less than I would like to, just because not from a winning standpoint. I'm a competitive person that
Hmm.
brings on my competitive nature. I love the prep of it, um, just because I refuse to be anything less than the most prepared person in the room in those situations. And for me, it just doesn't happen enough. I think that's kind of where I've grown to love more of the growth and management side and how I can scale this and the strategy, kind of the gamesmanship there. But that's probably the biggest misconception of how frequently you're actually in court.
Yeah. Okay. So here, let's switch gears a little bit. I'd like to do rapid fire kind of in the middle, just to
Sure.
lighten things up. So, guilty pleasure TV show,
Ooh, currently it is The Hunting Party.
The Hunting Party. What channel or what network is that on?
Netflix has it, but it's currently running live, I think, on NBC.
Okay. Best restaurant in Utica.
Ooh, wow, that's a tough one. We have a very eclectic food scene here. Um, Man, one of the best Italian would maybe have been a place called Joey's at 307, and they just closed and are moving the whole place to a country club at one of the local golf courses. But yeah, very, very good.
Okay. Pre-game ritual before a big trial.
This started in law school with my mock trial buddies. We would always buy matching match cars of a certain kind for the trial, and that would be our good luck charm. And I still have 6 of them from law school up on my desk.
um, worst piece of advice you've ever gotten.
Anybody who has given me advice who's not achieved what they're trying to coach me on.
Okay. One word your team would use to describe you.
Intense.
Okay. I can see that. Coffee or energy drink to get you through a long trial.
Coffee in the morning, energy drink in the afternoon.
Okay. So your Avo, or you say Avo or Avo? I just say
Avo.
AVVO
Yeah.
profile shows over 1,500 criminal defense cases. Is there one that stays with you more than anything else that you've done?
Probably yes. One of the very first murder cases I ever had, we took it over from another older attorney, and we really worked it up. And it was a terrible case for the prosecution. Very, very poor case. I still to this day have very serious reservations that my client did anything that he was. I don't think he was guilty. And this was heading to trial because the best offer they had made to us was 23 to life versus he was facing 25 to life.
Right.
And ultimately, as the trial prep continued and we met with the DAs and negotiated what pictures and certain aspects of discovery we would stipulate to and things like that, I think it became clear to the prosecution that there was no chance with us fighting this case that they were getting a conviction on murder. And we ultimately got them to concede maybe a week before trial and give us a gun charge with, I think, 5 years. Which my client was in possession of the gun. That was no question about that. So my client had no problem, accepting that plea. And I want to say it was the summer of 24, he got out. And he and his father randomly showed up at my office, and we're not even the same building. We're around the corner. So he found me. He and his father came in and thanked me for saving his life. And that was, I didn't expect them. I didn't even know he was getting out. I had lost track of it through all the other years and cases. And that was just touching. It was just reminded me that our conduct within these cases, how thoroughly we do our job, we might be on the case for 6 months, 18 months, if it's a long one going to trial here, but it has such a much more long lasting personal impact on our clients that we fail to appreciate 9 times out of 10, and that's why I say, we train our attorneys to not take anything for granted here. We don't take anybody at their word from the other side. We work up our cases very, very thoroughly because we know that one piece of paper could be the smoking gun we need to prove our client's innocence, versus rolling over and sending an innocent person to jail.
Yeah. I really appreciate that attitude. So your LinkedIn headline says father, entrepreneur, trial lawyer, human. Father's listed first. How does being a dad change how you run the firm?
Oh, in a number of ways. We're a very family first firm. And that stems from a lot of different things. I was brought up that way. And I have 3 of my own children and a stepdaughter. And my youngest, when the firm, so as I mentioned, I hired my first employee February of 17, my first associate attorney July, second secretary in October. In September, my youngest child was born. This was of 2017. And middle of November, at 7 weeks old, she's diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
So I was not in the office very much, and the small team we had and what elementary kind of delegation setup we had carried the day, and I had to kind of trust in that. And that changes a lot, obviously, perspective wise, both personally and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized if I was going to spend this much time away from my family building something, it was going to be something that A, I was proud of, B, that produced a lifestyle that I could, give my kids what they need and want, give them a great childhood and life, but also create that freedom for me to be able to step away and make sure that I'm taking care of them and creating the memories with them while I've got the chance.
So, Nick, we're running out of time, and I usually like to go on longer than this, but I'm kind of stacked up back to back this afternoon. I enjoyed it. So, if somebody wants to, they're in Utica or in the general upstate area, and they listened here and they think, man, that Nick has the kind of passion I want on my team. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can check us out on our website. It's cnytriallaw.com. They can find me on any of the social platforms. It's typically just Nick Passalacqua. Our phone numbers here are 315-500-NICK or 877-TRIAL-LAW. And that's the best ways to find us.
Oh, those are all really good URLs, phone numbers. Yeah, that's excellent. So my hat's off to you. Thanks for coming on.